This is the Presonus PD70, and at $130, it might be the cheapest sort of dynamic podcasting streaming microphone on the market. But the question remains, is it any good? Let's take a look. So without further ado, I'm really excited to see what's in this box, and I'm sure you guys are too, so let's pop her open. So opening it up right away, we have our safety warning packet, which we don't care about because we're dangerous and we like to live on the edge like Austin Powers. Some foam here, and we have the microphone, and that's it. So with this microphone, it's kind of a what you see is what you get. There's no USB cable because it doesn't have a USB connection. There's just an XLR audio port here on the bottom, and a little sort of built-in swivel stand similar to what you'd see on something like an SM7B or really any other broadcast-style microphone. Get about, let's say, 270-ish degrees of motion, which is acceptable. That's fine. There's no issues with that. As far as build quality goes, it's great. I mean, lifting it in my hand, like I'm getting tired holding this. It's a heavy microphone. So you are going to probably need a little bit beefier stand if you're planning on suspending this over a desk without like a clamp mount or a drill mount into the actual table of the desk. If you're suspending it over with a mic stand, make sure to get one that can handle the weight. Speaking of connections, on the bottom of the microphone, I just unscrewed this, you get a European to US mic thread adapter, which is always nice to see that they include that. I think pretty much every mic is going to include something along that line. A lot of the mic stands you might buy off Amazon or like desk mount stands often use the European mic thread. So seeing that included here is just a little bit of a fail-safe if the stand you have doesn't have the sort of adapter built in or isn't a US thread stand. The only other thing that I've noticed while fiddling around with this microphone is that the windscreen is removable. And if you take a look at the microphone, the capsule is actually seated about, I'd say about an inch and maybe a quarter back from the tip of the microphone. Now I'm assuming that that's to combat the proximity effect, which is something you're going to get with this because this is a cardioid polar pattern. But you never know. It's very similar once again to the SM7B where the capsule is recessed in the head a little bit. Now to see if the microphone is actually any good, I'm going to put it on a stand, plug an XLR cable into it, and record it into my audio interface for your listening pleasure. So having attached it to my mic stand here at this sort of low angle of, what is that, like 45 degrees, it's definitely pretty prone to tipping over. So once again, the weight is heavy, it feels great. I don't think you're going to break it if you drop it, but you may need to get a nice heavy stand. So I'm going to adjust the angle of this, plug in my XLR cable here, and we'll take a listen to how it sounds. So having plugged this into my audio interface, the one thing that's immediately apparent is how much gain I have to give it in order to get what I would call a solid level out of the microphone. Now I'm looking at the spec sheet here, and it has it listed at 1.6 millivolts per PA, which is higher than the 1.12 you get the SM7B, but having used this microphone with the SM7B, I'm not confident on that. I'd probably have to do some more testing in order to get a real idea of sort of how much gain you have to give it, but right now I'm up around 3 o'clock on my gain knob, which should give you an idea of just how much I'm pushing my interface to get a good signal out of this. So if there is a little bit of a noise floor, that could very well be because of the interface, because obviously dynamic microphones don't have any self-noise because they don't have any active electronics in it. So any noise that you're going to hear, any hiss, is going to be because we're using that cheaper interface that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. That said, let's listen to how the microphone itself sounds. This is an audio test of the Presonus PD70 microphone. Let's see how it handles plosives, and let's see how it handles a little bit breathier voices. Now let's see how it handles me being 3 to 4 inches away from the tip of the microphone. And next we'll check off-axis rejection by listening at 90 degrees and 180 degrees off-axis. So this is what the microphone sounds like at 90 degrees off-axis. And this is what it sounds like 180 degrees off-axis. So having listened back to this microphone, I wouldn't say disappointed is the right word, but I'm not pleased. Mainly because of the price. It is cheap. It's $130. It's a very cheap microphone. And aesthetically, it ticks a lot of boxes. It looks probably pretty good on camera. I have no idea because I haven't seen this footage. But it definitely has that kind of radio or podcast aesthetic to it, which a lot of people like. But the SM58 exists, and that's a $30 cheaper microphone that gives you a more extensive sort of podcast bass response, which is something that I think almost anyone starting a podcast wants. You want that intimate, sound where you've got kind of your voice really kind of up in someone's ears. And this microphone doesn't give that because, as we looked at it, the capsule was seated pretty far back in the body of the microphone. So you're not going to get as much proximity effect and not as much bass response. Now the SM7B does have that bass response, and it too has a sort of farther seated back capsule, but I don't know how they do it. I'm not a capsule designer, so I can't speak on that. All I know is they tried to copy the SM7B, and I hesitate to say copy because I don't think they intentionally did. I think it was just kind of oh, we should probably do this to get rid of the proximity effect. But in this kind of body of a microphone, oriented at this kind of price point and this kind of market, streaming, podcasting, stuff like that, I wouldn't have made the choice that they did. Because as it stands, this microphone has lackluster bass response, fine mids. The mids were actually, not terrible. They were pretty good. And the high end sounded like nails going down a chalkboard, so not great. Overall, I just kind of don't get this microphone. I wouldn't buy it because it doesn't make any sense to me. There's better microphones for the money. There's better options out there. And I guess my view to Presonus is I hope version 2 has all the things I just mentioned, because this one, well, this ain't it, chief. Anyways, you've been watching Vodek. I hope you enjoyed this video. We have reviews on a bunch of other microphones out there, and we will be doing a comparison between this directly with an SM58 and some other cheap sort of podcasting streaming microphones. So make sure you check those out when they come out if you are looking for alternatives to this in its price bracket, or even a little bit above if you want to, say, stretch your budget. Thank you for watching. As I said, this has been Vodek.